Hi everyone, Rich Crescenti here with another in our series of videos, Making Music with Melodyne. And today we're going to be continuing to focus on the very tight integration between Melodyne and Studio One. Now in this previous subset of videos, we've done some very cool things, right? We have taken a tempo map and extrapolated it from an overhead track and then applied that to every other track in that session. In the video after that, we took that tempo map and then used it to speed up and slow down the audio as need be, and we even evened out the tempo map of that song, smoothed out the performance. In the video after that, we brought in tambourine and shaker loops and adapted those to the dynamic performances of the tempo map that we had right there. Pre-recorded loops that had small variations to really match the band and sound very natural. Now with this video, we're going to go even further. I'm going to show you some very cool stuff today. This is a longer video today, but I think if you hang with me, I'm going to show you some really cool stuff that you can do that you should be very excited about. Today, we are going to be importing music from another track that doesn't have anything to do with this track and adapting it to match. I'm going to bring in an organ track that is not the same tempo, that is not the same key, and I'm going to adapt it to match this track. This is very cool. Some next level stuff. If you are into remixing, this has huge implications for you. Maybe you're mixing an album and the band decides that they really wish a song had an acoustic guitar track or an organ track, and it isn't on this song, but it is on another song in this record. You can grab it, bring it in, and totally reshape it and manipulate it to fix the track that you were working on. Very cool. All right, so let's get started. In order for us to bring in another piece of music, we're going to have to build ourselves what's called a lead sheet here. This means we're going to have to figure out the key and then figure out the chord track and build that chord track for this song. All right, so let's open up Melodyne right here and take a look. Right? We open up Melodyne on this bass track. We see that this was done in the universal algorithm. Now, previously when we worked on this song, we used the universal algorithm because we were time stretching everything. And that means bass, which is monophonic or melodic. That means acoustic guitar and electric guitar, which are polyphonic, drums, which are rhythmic. The universal algorithm is great for that. But now that we want to do some stuff specifically with key and chords, we want to now use the algorithm that we would normally use, that Melodyne would actually, by default, choose for each one of these instruments. So I'm going to come to my bass and choose melodic, which is monophonic, and redetect this here. I want to point out it shows the key is C major. That's the default in Melodyne. But watch what happens. As soon as it extrapolates the information from this bass track, we get G major blues. Now there's not a lot of information right now, so this could be wrong, right? There's a lot more tracks that are in here. The bass doesn't have that many notes that are in it. So this is all it knows so far based off of what it sees. So let's bring in some other tracks to give it more complete information and see if we can figure out exactly what the right key is. Now I've got this electric guitar track right here. We could use this. Let's give it a listen. That's a big part of the song and very much what is being played in the song, but it's distorted. And the more distorted it is, the more you get some overtones and you probably get some false positive notes, some things that aren't really part of the key of the song. So I wouldn't recommend using a distorted guitar like this. If you had a clean DI of this guitar, I would use that. But since I don't, instead what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the piano, still universal, and then holding down the command key, select the acoustic guitar, also universal. And grab all those notes and come over here to the algorithm and choose polyphonic decay and redetect. Now you may have seen it also showed polyphonic sustain in there. There's two choices, polyphonic sustain and polyphonic decay. Sustain is really for instruments that have continuous notes they can hold and not a lot of attack. So strings, for example, if I had a string quartet mic'd up in stereo, I would probably try polyphonic sustain. For instruments that have definitive attack and decay, like acoustic guitar, like piano, I'm going to use polyphonic decay for those. All right, now it has analyzed both of these, and I'm going to, using the command key again, add this bass back in so we get all these notes that are in this song. It's still showing G major blues because that's what it figured out at the beginning, but we can reanalyze this. So I'm going to hit Command A and select all the notes. Right click on here and choose Analyze Keys. This will reanalyze, and now we see that our key is D major. That's the right key for this song. So this is our key track right here. See where it says D major? If you wish to show or hide that key track, you can just select that button right there, and this will show or hide that track as sees fit. Okay, now underneath we also see a new track here, which is our chord track. That is this button right here. You can show and hide the chord track with that button right there. And this shows you all of the chords that are in the song. Now, I find that sometimes Melodyne doesn't always grab all of the chords where we need them. Take a little bit of extra time right here. Dial in this chord track. Make sure that it matches. Make sure that it's got the right chords. You'll be in better shape, and it will make the rest of your life faster and easier. Especially when you want to do any kind of pitch correction, if you want to try out different melodies. Taking a few minutes right now and getting this chord track right will help immensely. All right, so let's see this. I'm going to add in this chord right here, right at the beginning, which is the D-A. And you'll notice when you click on a chord, you can hear that noise. That is because I have monitor chords turned on. Now, I also have some other things turned off. I have extended chords turned off. That is by default normally on. I turned it off. There is nothing really jazzy or heady or weird going on in this track, so I turned off extended chords. I wanted to keep this simple and refined and make it very, very easy, so I turned off those extended chords. Now I want to add in some chords, right? I see that this is another D chord right here, but I see there's a change right here that isn't outlined above, so I can just double click there and double click there and double click there, and it's showing the wrong chords, but that's okay. If you right click, you'll get other choices. Oftentimes it's right, this time it wasn't, but oftentimes it is. And we can see if these are the right chords. Let's listen. Okay, so we get, and you can use the right and left arrows to go through. Perfect. Those are the chords. That's exactly what I want. I know that those are the chords for the rest of this portion of the song up until the first chorus, and that is the organ part that I am reshaping. So I'm going to go through and just mark these in real quick. Now, there are a few different ways that you can add and change chords in this chord track. For example, if you ever see this little symbol right here, you can just double click and it will add in a new chord right there. And if we like that chord that's in there, we could hit enter. If we don't, we could type in a different chord. I'm going to hit enter because that's the chord I want right there. We hear that lovely chord again. If you wanted to choose a different chord, for example, you can right click on this and see other options that are available depending upon how you think that chord should be written out and depending upon how it's voiced as well. Now that I've got these three chords right here, right? This D to A, this C/G, and this G, this is actually what's going to happen for the rest of this part of the song until bar 21. And let's check it again. That is exactly what we want right there. And instead of punching this in throughout the whole time, I want to just fill this in all the way to bar 21. So I'm going to select starting at bar 7 and then go all the way through to bar 20 and then just hit delete and clear those out, right? Now I got rid of the one starting at 7 right here, so I'm just going to add in another one again right there. And now all I have to do is select this chord, and holding down shift I can select this one and then just hit Command C to copy and then come right here and I'm going to hit Command V to paste, and you'll see it posted these all the way through, and now we've got all of those correct. Getting this up through the first chorus is exactly what I needed. I want that exact right chord track because later on when I start moving these things around, I want it to follow these chords exactly. And I want it to be the chords that I know are right in the song. So take a few minutes, put all that information in. You'll find your life is a lot easier. Okay, great. So now I've got my key mapped out. I've got my chords mapped out for the whole song. Now we can bring in this other track. So I'm going to close Melodyne, and let's bring in this organ part from another song. It's called Organ Verse A, 16 bars. I'm going to take this and drag this in right over to bar 5. And let's give it a listen, right? When we listen to this, you're going to see not the right key, not the right tempo. Okay, not working at all. So this is pretty easy to get into place. First things first, we want to make sure whenever we're doing this that we set it up so that Studio One treats this as tempo changes that we want it set to time stretch, right? This is how this track will change in regards to tempo changes, and we don't want it to follow or move the beginning. We want it to stretch. So we choose time stretch. Now I come over here and put Melodyne on this track. It's as simple as hitting Command M. It's going to open up Melodyne and analyze this track with its polyphonic detection. And now we see here it is. Okay. First things first, we see this flashing light. Again, this is always telling us we got to make a choice right here. So let's look at this. This says confirm 50 BPM is the original file tempo, the tempo of this organ track that we brought in. I know for a fact that it was not 50, it was actually 100 because that's the song I brought it in from. So I'm going to come over here to assign file tempo, and instead of choosing 50, I'm going to slide this up and choose 100. Now, everything will be stretched and it should match up with this song. So we should have the tempo right, but not the key. Let's give it a listen. Okay, great. The tempo is right. Now, the next thing we're going to do right here is another one of those things that I think is very important. And sometimes people don't do this because they're afraid of it. They don't understand it. But this involves note assignment mode. And this is so important. Take a few minutes, go through and make your adjustments in note assignment mode. Remember, that's this wrench right here. Note assignment mode is not how you edit. And I understand why people don't want to do this. They want to get in and just start editing and fixing things right away. But spending a few minutes in note assignment mode will set it up so that the rest of your day, the rest of your time is so much easier. It'll eliminate a lot of false choices. You can tell it to avoid certain things you don't want to deal with anyway. It'll make it easier if you ever want to export any audio as MIDI. It's just a smarter way to work. Do a little bit of work now, make the rest of your life easier. All right, so let's take a look at this. First things first, we see that there are some little notes down here, some kind of overtones or undertones, some kind of little stops, maybe they're foot pedal noises. I don't know what they are, but these are not in the notes of the song, so I want to avoid these. And in the polyphonic mode, we have these Venetian blinds, that's what they call them, so I'm just going to drag these up to ignore everything that is not the main notes of the song that we are looking at. Now that we've got that in place, let's see what else we've got going on here. I see a few places where there are some notes where there should have been a little note in there that it just got cut off. This is not a big deal. We just want to go over here to our note activation tool and just turn these on, right? So I'm just going to click on this one and add that note back in. And then holding the shift key, I can scroll through. I'm going to add this note back in. As I go back through, I'm going to add this note back in. And I think there's one more, add this note back in. Okay, now we are seeing all the notes we want to see, not seeing any of the notes we don't want to see. Now the next thing that we're going to have to do, which is kind of important, is make sure that the note separations are in the right place. Now, if you look at right here, some of these notes, like this one right here, this is it sees this as one big, very long note. And that's not going to do well for us when we want to cut things up and move them around based off of chords and keys and different tracks and try out different things to make this fit in with the song. We need more separations than this. So we're going to want to go to our note separation tool. And this shows us a few different things that are going on right here. Right? So for example, when we see this little triangle with this track down here, that is a note separation. These lines that are coming down from above right here are the potential note separations. So let's go through and make sure that we don't have any doubles or false ones and everything is in the right place. For example, I see that this note separation should really be at the beginning of this note, right? This is that note we fixed earlier. So let's move this over here and then come up to the top and eliminate this little false double right there. See another little false double right there that I want to get rid of. Okay, so that's what we're looking for at this moment. Same thing right here, right? I'm going to move this one over to here and then eliminate this false double. Let's see any others. Let's keep looking. Same thing. This is the same note. This came from another song with 16 bars of the same part. So I'm going to see the same problem. I'm going to eliminate this false double and then do the exact same thing here. Move this note separation and move this little double out of the way. Great. Okay. Now, what I see now are some separations that I want to make to these notes, and here's a separation I want to make here. However, I don't want this separation here. This is just the little tail end of the note I don't want to separate. But I do see a change from this note to this note, so I might want this one to separate here. So I can just come here. As a matter of fact, to all of these, I can just double click and add that note separation. Double click, add that note separation. Double click, add that one. Double click, add that one. Great. This is a really fast way to do this. Just add in each one of these. Again, this is not something that I would recommend skipping just because doing this right now is going to make the rest of our life easier. This actually takes longer to talk about than it does to actually do it. If I wasn't describing this, I'd probably be done already. Doesn't take all that long, worth the extra time. And I'll show you why in just a little bit. You'll see why this is worth this. Put that other one in there, add that one there. Okay, now up at the very top, we see that there already are some separations. That's what these vertical lines in. These were lines that are separated in the original track. Some of these are off a little bit. So I'm going to move these right to the grid where they should be. This one and this one should be right at those bar and beat marker lines. Right, same thing here. I'm going to move this over and adjust this here. Again, note assignment mode is how Melodyne is interpreting this information. So we are just making a couple corrections to how Melodyne is interpreting this. This will all be worth it in the payoff at the end, I promise you. A little bit of nudging there, and that should be it. Now the only other things that I see is these top notes have a bunch of separations. We need that separation, we need all of them. So when you want to just add a bunch that are in there, you could select one big long note like this, or just click E4, which will select all of these, right click, reseparate notes at the starting point lines. Those long orange vertical lines are the starting point lines, and this will reseparate all of these. Great. So now we have separations only where we want them, not any place else. We don't have any false doubles. We have all the separations we need. We can now get out of note assignment mode, and we see that all of these separations are in place. And more importantly, what we see is that a lot of these changes, these separations, match up to our chord changes that we have right here. So now when we start to move these notes around, these changes are going to happen in a way that makes sense musically with this song, based off the bars and beats and based off the chord changes. Great. Now we have set this track up to make it very easy to move things around. This next part is where it becomes kind of fun and exciting. Okay, now to describe the next part and how we're going to be moving these things around, we need to understand this right here, which is our pitch grid. And if you've never worked in Melodyne before, or you're kind of new to it, you might not understand a pitch grid, but if you've worked in a DAW, you're most likely used to a timing grid, right? When there's a grid, you can only cut or move things around based off of the exact grid lines. Whole note, quarter note, half note, etc. Now, with a pitch grid, it's the same idea. We can only move notes around the grid, and the grid being either the notes or the chord or the key. So the choices we make here are whether or not to have snap behavior, which is whether or not to have grid behavior and the different types of grid, and then also the background and what kind of snap possibilities we have. So first off, let's talk about these 5 choices right here, which is the background. We've got keyboard, key, chord, chord scale, and pitch lines. Let's start off with keyboard. When I select this, these white and gray lines behave like a piano keyboard, right? The white lines are the white keys on a piano. The gray lines represent the black keys on a piano. So if you are used to working on a keyboard or piano, this is a very nice way to view things, and you'll be very comfortable with this. Next up is our key. When we set this to key, We have 8 possible choices within an octave, and it's all based around the key of the song. This key is D major, so every note that is in the key of D major is white. Every note that is not in the key of D major is gray. Very easy to work with whatever notes are in the key of the song. After key, we come to chord. Now, chord is useful because this only gives us 3 or 4 choices, and the white notes are only what is in this particular chord right here. This is great for what we're doing today. For this example, we're moving around a rhythmic sort of background instrument. So chord is great for this because it constrains our choices to the basic 3 or 4 notes that are in that chord. Very great for, again, rhythmic or background instruments. Now after that, we come to chord scale. Chord scale uses uses the scale, but then also takes into account the chords that are being played right there. This is great for lead melodic lines like lead vocals, lead guitar, any top line melody. Perfect for this because now you can move things around and have a lot of choices, but still work within the constraints of the song, work within the constraints of the key and the chords that are being played against that key. Really great, again, for lead lines, melodic lines. The last one that we have here is pitch lines. And this is really only for when we are using pitch correction. This won't do us too much good today. All right, so let's move back to the key. The chord that we're going to be working with today. Chord, again, is very, very useful for this. And I want to talk a little bit about snap. Now, we've got a couple different types of snap here. When we are set to no snap, you can literally move these notes and there is no constraint on it. I can move a note just a tiny bit up or just a tiny bit down. There is no constraint. We are not working within the grid. We have chromatic snap, and when it's set to chromatic snap, we move based off of a half step, based off a chromatic scale. Chromatic is also very, very useful for when you want to move notes around that are not in that key, not in that chord. Sometimes we purposefully want to take a note and make it sharp or make it flat, and that's where the chromatic scale really becomes useful. And then we come to our snap. Now in this case, we've got the chord snap, right? And what this means is that I move these notes around. They are going to snap into these positions based around the chord structure that we've built right there. And I want to show you how this works because this is really great for this type of instrument, right? Let's select all of these and take a look at it for a minute. Now, we know this is in the key of D major, right? So I've got all of these are one particular note right here. And since that was in the key of D, it would be good if all of those were dragged down to this D. That would probably be something that would work well with this song. So let's drag all of those down, right down to D, and let's give this a listen. Okay, that's interesting. That works. That it's better than it was before by a long shot, right? We just dragged that down to the D, and that gave us some interesting choices. Let's undo that. Come to undo our pitch centers right here. Let's see what happens when we just double click on this, and is it just move things around where it sees fit. All right, I'm just going to double click on all these notes, and we get a totally different structure right here. Let's give this a listen. Also very, very useful, right? There's a lot of stuff that we could do right there, and lots of flexibility. All right, I'm going to undo those as well, and I'm going to come over here and just show you something real quick and just kind of work on another way that we can do this. Now, while this saves for a second, I'm going to switch over to chromatic snap, right? And we're just going to be using this just in snap, and I'm just going to drag this down to there, and we're going to see this actually gave us some notes that aren't in the key of this song. But maybe what I want to do is just thin this out and get rid of some stuff that's not in there. Now, up until now, we've been more or less working in a vacuum, right? We've just been working off of the key and the chord track. But what often matters a lot also are the other instruments that were played in this particular song, right? It's not just about what the chord track says, it's about what the other instruments are doing. And this is where these gray blobs in Melodyne become very, very useful, because we can look at the piano and we can look at the acoustic guitar. And we can look at these other instruments and see what else was played in there and decide where we want to move some of these things to make them match up or get out of the way of another instrument, right? And the whole point about this is that you can take something like this and manipulate it and make it work with you. For example, maybe I also want to look at the electric guitar because those rhythms are going to be important for where I want to leave some gaps and some changes. Now, looking at this electric guitar track right across the top right there, this is still in universal, but this is giving me the rhythm of the song right here. Okay, so maybe I say, you know what, these particular notes right here, these are not in the key and I don't want these. So I'm going to select these, all of these notes right here, and just switch over to my amplitude tool and just double click on them. And that moves them out. And I might do the exact same thing with this note right here. Except maybe this time, instead of hitting them with the amplitude tool, what I will do is just delete them and they won't be there anymore. Lastly, I see that these notes not in the key of the song. So I'm going to select these right here. I'm trying to thin this out. You know, this is not necessarily a song that needs a lot of thick instrumentation. There is already piano and multiple electrics, acoustic guitar, lap steel. There's all sorts of stuff going on. So thinning out some space here might work. Let's give this a listen with these right here. Okay, so I like how we have only this change where the guitar makes a change, but this now droney part is a little bit empty. That's not a problem. I can take these notes right here, switch to my time tool, and just stretch those out. And I can do the exact same thing here and here, and really make everything just fit what this song needs. Again, the beauty of all of this is that you have the ability to adapt whatever piece you have to match the piece you're bringing it into. All kinds of flexibility. Let's pull this in right here and give this a listen. Alright, maybe I want just a little more change where those guitar chords change. If I select these notes here, come back to my pitch tool, I can drag those notes up to there, and let's give this a listen. And you know what, I might just clean up that bottom end a little bit more just to get rid of some of this and not have that low end fighting as much with the other instruments. And here we go. A little simpler, blends in a little bit better with the background than all the notes that we had. Cleaning this out, I think, pruned it and left a little more space for the other instruments that are in there. The beauty of this is that you can adapt it to whatever you need. Now there's one more quick trick that I want to show you, right? And I'm going to only show this organ for a sec to show this to you. But as you may know, when you click on this setting right here, you have monitor when editing blobs. So when you click on a blob, like so, you hear that note. But what I want to show you is that if you hold down Command while you're doing that, you get the whole chord. So you can now reshape chords and see what they sound like as you try different chords out. It's going to take a second while it saves, but then I'll show you another chord. So a really interesting way to just try chords out as you're hearing them. Now that will always end up playing out of the last selected track, wherever you see this dot. Just a note, just a reminder, so if that track is muted, you won't hear anything. Hope you've enjoyed this today. Thanks.